when you go into a retreat space and you do a meditation, you take a medicine journey. These are very popular now. You have these experiences of seeing, oh, I am the universe. Oh, I am the river of life. If you don't have the integration tools, it's a hangover. It really is a hangover. You get headaches, you go flat on your back, you want to shut the curtains, you know?
So, out of curiosity, why would the goddess want to give the infinite limitation? Because isn't that not defeating the purpose of being the infinite? Because the infinite is supposed to encompass everything. So why would one want to have limitation?
Yeah, if you're doing the work and you've done all those things and you still feel hollow on the inside, notice what you notice and stop doing that. No, that's really what it says. It really is. It's like, just, you know, we think it's so hard. It's like, it's what I just said. It's like, we think this is such hard work, right? It's such hard work to...
Hey Conscious Man 7 family, quick question before we start. Do you love the depth of these conversations but hate when ads break the flow? I get it. Ads can feel like speed bumps on a highway, pulling you out of that deep zone. That's why we created a way for you to enjoy every episode completely ad-free while supporting the show at the same time. For just a few bucks a month on Patreon or Locals, you'll get full access to uninterrupted episodes. You'll get direct access to me so you can ask me any questions that you have, some cool other perks like early releases, and you'll also help us keep bringing you the powerful conversations that mainstream platforms won't touch. The link is in the show notes. Join us there and be part of this movement. Ever look up and see those dull, grey skies streaked with chemtrails and you feel your energy sink? You're not imagining it. Something in you knows the sky isn't supposed to look that way. But what if you could bring back the blue? What if there was a way to clear the air inside you and above you? That's where the Kembo comes in. They create powerful orgonite, tools that generate orgone energy, the life force that helps neutralize EMFs from your mobile phone, your Wi-Fi, and even 5G. It's nature's way of restoring balance, bringing cleaner air, calmer energy, and deeper sleep. Every piece from the Kembo is handmade, from tactical tower busters to beautiful pyramids and jewelry, crafted with the precise ingredients to generate real orgone energy. And here's the best part. They've proven it. For over 10 years, they've cleared thousands of miles of chemtrails, bringing the blue back to the skies around the world. So if you're ready to take back your weather and your well-being, go to thekembo.com. Use coupon code CM7 for 10% off and experience the shift for yourself. Don't fear the chemtrails or the EMF. Be empowered with the Kembo and never feel helpless again. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned because we have some more great content coming soon. What if everything you've been taught about spiritual awakening is only half the story, and that missing half is the very reason you're still stuck? Hello friends, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host Todd Cave, and today I am joined by Cynthia Abulafia, author, yoga therapist, and Shakta Tantra lineage practitioner with over 20 years of experience working with some of the most profound and misunderstood territory in human growth. Cynthia has coined a phrase that I think is going to hit you like a freight train: the transcendence hangover. It's that disorientating space after a meditation retreat, a plant medicine ceremony, a profound grief, or a peak experience when the world hasn't changed but you have, and nobody gave you a roadmap for coming back. In her new book, Embodying the Goddess, she identifies what she calls the transcendence bias, the idea that real spirituality means going up and out of the body, when the actual transformation happens when you learn to come back in. We're also going deep on the masculine and feminine within every one of us, why so many so-called divine feminine teachings are quietly anti-masculine, and what it truly means to integrate a spiritual awakening into the life you're actually living.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You got to be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it,
Cynthia, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. How are you today?
I'm really happy to be here, Todd.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to talking to you today. And we had a really good pre-interview chat, and I think we're going to have a really good and interesting conversation today. So as I like to start all of my conversations, I like to find out a little bit more about people and a bit of their origin story. So who is Cynthia specifically? So your biography describes you as having had lifelong Kundalini awakenings, a phrase that will stop most people in their tracks. What does a lifelong Kundalini awakening actually look like? And when did you realize that what you were experiencing wasn't just ordinary life?
Well, lifelong, let's see. I had my first pretty profound altering spiritual experience when I was 12 or so, preteen. And that wasn't necessarily a Kundalini awakening. We can talk about Kundalini awakening. That was more an experience of looking through my eyes. And I was visiting family in Turkey. My family, I'm actually going to Turkey next week. So my father is Turkish. And it was the middle of the night and I was jet lagged. And I looked out of my eyes in a rather disoriented state. And I realized that everything I was looking at was made out of one consciousness or one awareness. That was a total dissolving experience. Yes, that's called wall. Yes, that's called bed. Yes, that's called table. And it's one awareness. It's made out of one divinity, one understanding, one knowing of itself. But I didn't track that as a Kundalini awakening. I tracked that as more a challenge, a direct challenge to religion and spirituality, and certainly the religions that I had known. But it was later in my life, when I was 24, that I had a more classic, I could even say textbook, Kundalini awakening. I didn't realize it at the time, but where the energy came through my body and I felt real movement at the subtle body going through my spine, which is more related to what most people today call Kundalini awakening, although we can unpack that if you want to, Todd.
Wow. So at 12 years old, you had your first sort of awareness of all of that. I mean, that must have been kind of heavy for 12 years old. No one telling you about these things. How did that kind of shift your paradigm at that age? Or did it? Or did you know what was happening?
It did. It really did. It really changed everything for me. I created my own religion.
Wow.
I called it One, so it's not much of a religion. I just realized, I was born and raised Jewish, and I was going to a Christian school. So I was going to church a few times a week. And I realized that what I was experiencing was a divine experience. And it was also very different from what in my 12-year-old very short lifespan I had seen represented to me out in the world. I think that religion is more complex than that. I'm not going to say that that's absent in religions, but at the time, that's how it seemed to me. So I said, forget everything I've heard. This is what I'm going to focus on, this one. And I didn't have any rules. I didn't have any, bylaws. I just had this title and this driving curiosity, this driving need to understand really, what is God? What is the divine? What is life?
Wow, that is very interesting. I mean, I've heard, like my sister, she had an imaginary friend when we were kids, but for you to have that kind of experience is very, very interesting. So you hold a master's degree in nutrition. You're working on a second master's in yogic studies with a focus on Tantra and Sanskrit. You hold ERYT 500, CIAYT, and YACEP credentials. And you've been teaching at Yoga Soup in Santa Barbara since 2007. This is clearly a voracious academic mind at work here, alongside a deeply embodied practice. What pulled you from the physical and intellectual into the spiritual? And was there a moment where the two became inseparable?
What a good question. I think it might be the other way around. I think I was driven by the spiritual and trying to understand what spiritual texts were saying, what my direct experience was revealing and unfolding to me. And I began to apply practices according to that. And then I began to apply academia according to that. Now, the truth is I'm a devotee. That's really what I am. And if I study and going down these tracks where now I'm studying Sanskrit so that I can read sacred text directly, which feels very important to me. Understanding it, we talked, Todd, before we started, I really like to get names right. For me, that extends to sacred text. I really like to read and understand things in a way that's more direct, that's really respectful to the text. I would like to be able to read it. And if I'm going to trip and fall over a word, it's not a translated word. At least I'm doing my best with what I'm studying. And that's not driven by academia. That's not driven by the things that I've added on to myself. It's driven by devotion. I would say that my experience is spiritual first. And then here I am trying to make sense of that, just trying to do my best, really, to make sense of that.
It's almost like if you're trying to back up the spiritual with the academic, the physical, and the way that people think so that they can understand these things. Because I think that back in the day, sort of like science and spirituality were really one. And it feels like they've been separated now, almost like when you had a separation of church and state. And
yes.
It's almost like you're trying to put them back together from listening to you.
I don't think there is a separation. I think we created that in the same way we created every separation there is. We have imposed those boundaries, limitations. Science was very well developed in some of these religious texts, especially the ones that I read that I love. I think that the science that most of us study today, what we call science, is really based on a matter model. It's based on a physicality of the universe and what we can see and observe. That is a very limited perspective, in my opinion. I think science is changing rapidly. It's changing every day. Studies are coming out that challenge this perspective. We're moving beyond it, and we have further to go. The way that I see it is texts would heartily agree and map the scientific models. They would applaud them. These are scientists. Some of the most brilliant scientific minds still existed in the medieval period. But what were they studying? They were studying the nature of consciousness. They weren't studying astrophysics back then, but they were studying consciousness. They were studying their direct experience of reality and tracking it with precision that was remarkable. They were studying sound and sound technology and developing technologies. We think of yoga as a practice. Yoga is a technology. We think of chanting as a practice. Chanting is a technology, and it's designed to be a technology. It's kind of like taking a flint and striking the flint and striking the spark over and over again. It's meant to catch something. Qigong, Tai Chi, these are technologies. What are they meant to catch? What is the science of the spirituality? It's meant to ignite consciousness to remember itself.
That is fascinating. I have never heard anyone describe them as technologies, but it very much makes sense because the way you explained it there is the technology on how you can get the body into state to receive more information, how to get the body aligned back to source so you can receive more information, how you can look inward at yourself. So the technology would proverbially put up a mirror in front of you to see yourself back. So, okay, that's, I've never heard it described as technology, practices, modalities, medicine, you can call it, but technology, that's a first. So,
yeah. And you just used an analogy that is very commonly used, the mirror. This is part of the technology. I think that you might understand intuitively or have experienced these technologies because the analogy of the mirror is something I talk a lot about in my book. And it's something that some of the most brilliant minds in the traditions that I study talk about, like Abhinavagupta and Uttapaladeva. They talk about the mirror, especially Abhinavagupta. These are medieval sages. And the mirror, how do you polish the mirror so that reality is looking back at you? Everything is you. We are emitting reality and then reabsorbing reality. How do we create a reality for ourselves where the mirror is shining more honestly and more clearly? Because if the instrument of my inner being is broken or dusty, if I am traumatized, I work a lot with trauma. To me, Kundalini awakening and trauma go hand in hand. So if there has been trauma in my lived experience or my ancestral experience or my karmic experience, there's many different types of trauma, that's a kind of putting dust on the mirror. So we have to do the work, we have to take on the practices, we have to do the technologies that take the mirror and start to clean it. Or maybe even patch something that's been broken, something that we've internalized, something somebody has told us, or we've been reflected by our culture. Religion's really good at throwing dust on the mirror.
I agree 100%. And like my followers, my listeners know my views on religion. I'm very critical of religion, so I'm not going to get sidetracked there. So, but that's very interesting about the shining of the mirror and even patching it. So you've described your life's work as being committed to giving voice and language back to the goddess as the embodied experience. That is a very specific and deliberate mission. Where did that urgency come from? Was there a moment where you looked around and thought, nobody is saying this, so I must?
I do hear people saying it. I hear people wanting so badly to connect with the divine feminine. And at the same time, in the West especially, we have so corrupted the concept of the divine feminine and subjugated her and taken the female sexed divinity and put her in a tiny, tiny little box, and then said, hey, these are the words that we can use to describe you, and only these words. And history shows us that this is not true. Other cultures show us that this is not true. For me, unpacking this mission of giving language back to the divine feminine addresses internalized generational trauma, religious trauma. It addresses politics. It's very political, right? The masculine, feminine, these roles are very political. It looks at the history of the patriarchy. It looks at empire as well. It's kind of this really major aspect that interlinks so many of the capital P problems we have on Earth today. And they are rooted in history. I'm really interested in history. Was there a time when society didn't look this way? And where was that? And when was that? Why did it change? Why did the goddess, who used to be the primary deity for humans, and at least the primary deity who was married to a god and a goddess, why was she eradicated? Where was she eradicated? When was she eradicated and subjugated? And what have the consequences been? And as I started really looking at that, I realized, yes, this is worth my devotion, my time, and my energy to unpack, because I too carry all the internalized messages. I too carry all of the conditioning and all of the ways that I think, oh, well, this is feminine and this is masculine, and I should be this way and I should not be that way. These are some of the things that we all adopt. We just put them in our backpack and we think, well, everybody else is acting this way, so I act this way too. And unfortunately, those are learned habits.
Yeah, right? I can make a statement here now that people think is kind of different. I think God is actually feminine in all matter of respects, because, well, I think there's more creation, more as a female thing than the supposed masculine God figure that we have, So you're right. The ancient cultures used to give a lot of reverence to the goddess, because this way Isis was also known as Ishtar Nana. She was the goddess for the Indus Valley, right? Which is where most of this information that you are very aligned to comes from. So, I find it kind of interesting that, not to go too much on a tangent, but when you go into the ancient texts, like how much responsibility the feminine actually did have and did do, right? So,
yes.
and I think that the Indus Valley is where it was lost, really. When they say lost, in the sense, lost from the rest of the world, right? Because it maintained there, but it just never propagated the rest of the world. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, or who knows, right? Because there were scripts in the Indus Valley civilization, but nobody can read them. We don't have a way to read their scripts. We don't have a translating tool. But Inanna and Sumeria and Babylon, by the way, her older sister, I don't know if you've ever studied her older sister, Ereshkigal, the goddess of death.
Yep.
Oh, she's incredible. I love her. She is so cool. There's this story about Ereshkigal. I like the dark goddess. I am obsessed with the dark goddess. So Ereshkigal is one of my favorites. There's this story where Inanna, in her descent into the underworld, the 7 layers of descent, and she finally reaches the underworld, and then she gets judged as inadequate. She actually gets killed and hung up on the wall. It's very gruesome. But Ereshkigal is in grief, not because of Inanna, but because her consort died. So in this rescue effort to get Inanna out of the underworld, these two tiny, tiny little beings come down. And the way that they get Ereshkigal to pay attention and come out of her grief is through this radical act of mirroring and compassion, where Ereshkigal is sobbing and racked, and she's in so much pain that it's as though she's in labor. And I wonder at that analogy, because I think it's possible and so evocative to be in so much pain that it feels like labor, like going through the birthing pain, where her body is contracting and she's crying out, "Oh, my heart, oh, my heart." And these two tiny little beings, all they do is echo her, "Oh, my heart, oh, my heart." And she says, "Oh, my liver, oh, my liver." And they say, "Oh, oh, my liver, oh, my liver." And all they do is repeat her words. And then finally she pays attention and she knows, she says, "Who are you? And what do you want? I'll give you anything," because there's this really deep aspect of this dark goddess that wants to be seen. And it's this mirroring of radical compassion that she represents, that she holds. It's both, she can destroy you and kill you, and you may be judged and desiccated and put up on the wall, but also you may be given a radical act of grace and compassion and rebirth as well. But yeah, the goddess is so interesting. I went on a total tangent there, Todd, but
It's
I
fine.
love Ereshkigal.
It's fine. The thing is, I go on tangents about myself, so I always have to control myself, because these topics as well, I find fascinating and they interest me, and I have delved very deep into them as well. And it's a treat to hear you speak about these things so eloquently, to be honest with you. So you've coined the term transcendence bias, and you define it as when a spiritual tradition teaches you to go up and out, but forgets to tell us how to come back into the body. In your book, you describe how this has been the dominant pattern across millennia of religious and spiritual tradition. Where did you first recognize this pattern, and why do you believe it is causing so much damage to the modern seeker right now?
Well, that is the opposite of the story I just said, isn't it? Where culture started to change, where the goddess started to get a little subordinated in certain places. And you see the Abrahamic religions come in, you see Buddhism, which is another one of the big patriarchies. And in so many of these traditions, as beautiful as they are, truly beautiful, and their priority was death and dying practices. That just is simply what their aim is. Buddhism, at the highest level, is a death and dying practice. So much so that it brings you carefully into the transcendent experience. And this lent itself into yoga as well, and many other Eastern traditions, not just the Western traditions, where we were taught in many different places on earth how to climb the ladder into the transcendent experience. In some places, that was called heaven. So salvation from life, salvation from the body. The body is a problem. The body is polluted. The body is illusion. I need salvation from the body. Okay, we're going to offer you a technology that will allow you to achieve heaven, or grace, or nirodha, or samadhi. And then samadhi, taken to its very end, is mahasamadhi, which is death, the release of the body. You become so enlightened that you no longer have a need for this dream illusion called body and form, so you let that go. But all of these are let it go methods. See that you are not. See that you are not your body. See that you are not your thoughts. See that you are not your emotions. You are not your sensations. You are not your memories. These are half of the spiritual picture. That is the divine masculine. The divine masculine is so important because it's the way that we understand that we are the ground of consciousness itself. See that you are not those things. See that you are this huge, the space that contains all of reality, the Turiya, the space that holds the pulsation. If we're given technologies to climb the ladder to heaven, samadhi, or enlightenment, for example, but we're never taught to climb back down the ladder. And those religions don't teach you how to go down the ladder. They only teach you how to go up. That's what I call the transcendence hangover. What do? Because we need both. And historically, the goddess has represented the coming back down into form. Historically, and not everywhere on earth, but in a lot of places on earth, for about 50,000 years at least, she represented Mother Earth. She represented sound, vibration, wisdom, song, which is vibration. What is vibration? Vibration is pulsation. Pulsation is laughter and making love and sobbing and fear. Pulsation is the lived experience. She represented that. Wisdom, sound, the mother tongue. What is the mother tongue? It's the alphabet. It's sound vibration. What is Mother Earth? Mother Earth is embodiment. Paying attention not to what's up, which is light, which is the hole in the sky, which is the sun, but it's the opposite. It's the coming down to earth. We need both. We don't want to prioritize one over the other. Now, this is where the divine masculine and the divine feminine are equally important. And we also need to give language back to the divine feminine so that people know how to braid their transcendent experiences into their bodies and into their lives. Because last time I checked, most people I know engaging in spiritual practice are not trying to die. They're not trying to drop their bodies. And until and unless we are at that stage in our lives where we need those practices to help transition us out of form, well, guess what? We still have to go to the grocery store. And we still have to take our dogs for the walk. And we still have to, wake up and take that appointment. And oh my goodness, no, I can't cancel that appointment. I need a job. I need to pay my rent. Now, we're engaging in all of these practices that don't teach us how to take the transcendent experience and pull it into life. We're only taught how to start at life and end at transcendence. And it's a circle. It's a circle. It's not a line. We don't get to touch enlightenment and then, I crossed the line. I'm now enlightened. I used to think this. I used to think there was such thing as enlightenment. Okay, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to achieve this thing called enlightenment. Once I cross this invisible line into enlightenment that I've heard so much about, then I'll be peaceful. Then I'll be happy. I'll be so much happy then. I had this image of like a wise old man sitting in a diaper on a mountain. I don't know why I thought I could get there because none of that really describes me at all. There's just fundamental truth that I will never be a wise old man on a mountain.
True.
But we're taught that there's this such thing and that there's peace at the end of it. But then we're never told by our traditions to come back into body or how to come back into body.
You know what you're saying makes me think along the lines of living in the matrix but not being of it, and a bit like walking between worlds, a bit like how Yeshua was trying to teach us, where you can be in the system but not of the system, where you were able to go to the grocery store, do these things, but you're still at a level of awareness and understanding that these things are just physical things. They'll come and they'll go. And then there's something greater than you inside of you that connects you to everything. And this is the thing that we have now, where we're only conditioned to just think about, well, I need to get a job to pay the rent, and I need to go to the grocery store, and I need to do these chores. And we're so busy with all of these things that we forget to just live. And I think that is what you're saying now, is almost like just living, having the experience, but still able to still do those things, but those things don't define you. And I think where we are today is that those things define people today, that they just forgot who they are, basically.
Well put. Well put.
Yeah, so you describe a transcendence hangover, that disorientating space after a spiritual awakening when the world hasn't changed but you have. When sensitivity is high, when boundaries feel thin, when daily life suddenly feels overwhelmingly loud. Can you describe what that actually feels like from the inside, and why most people have no idea that this is a recognized phenomenon with a name?
Well, now it's a recognized phenomenon with a name. And I'm not sure that it was. The transcendence hangover is what I'm talking about. It's when you go into a retreat space and you do a meditation, you take a medicine journey. These are very popular now. You have these experiences of seeing, oh, I am the universe. Oh, I am the river of life. And then if you don't have the tools to integrate, maybe the word is integration that's out there, right? Therapists call it integration. If you don't have the integration tools, it's a hangover. It really is a hangover. You get headaches, you go flat on your back, you want to shut the curtains, it's pretty rough. You look around you and you're like, turn it off, just turn it off. And I don't know of anything quite so painful as the transcendence hangover, because it's rooted in something very real. People have very real experiences of being life, of seeing things that are so powerful and profound, and then not really being told, okay, this is how you weave this into the ordinary experience, the ordinary 9 to 5. By the way you do that is through curiosity and reverence. That's what my book is about. This is how you weave this into life. Curiosity and reverence, again and again and again. And then it's not a hangover. Then you get to pull the transcendent experience into the contraction. A moment ago, you said you think God might be female.
Yeah, I do.
And in Tantra, here's the model. I'll tell you the frame story for some of the traditions that I study. They say that God is the infinite. He is the transcendent ground of being. This is how they represent him. He's the infinite. I know sometimes she gets to be that too. It gets a little complicated, but let's just say for now, he is the ground of reality. He is the infinite. She emerges out of the infinite. So she's also the infinite, but she emerges out of the infinite and she turns to her beloved because she's really in love with him. And she wants to give him something, but there's only one thing you can give to the infinite. The infinite has everything contained. The only thing that you can give to the infinite that the infinite does not have is limitation. You can't divide infinity. You can't multiply infinity. You can't add 1 to infinity. You can't subtract 10 from infinity. The goddess is pulsation and limitation. What does that mean? It means that we are her. We, as in the lived experience of being contained in a limited form, where every once in a while, and not always, but every once in a while, I really believe that this skin is where I end. And the space around me begins.
Okay, I got a question here because
I know, I'm looking at your face.
all right, so Out of curiosity, why would the goddess want to give the infinite limitation? Because isn't that not defeating the purpose of being the infinite? Because the infinite is supposed to encompass everything. So why would one want to have limitation?
Yeah, exactly. Why? Out of love, they say. Out of love. And they also use the word out of play, Leela, play, divine play, so that they can frolic and make love to each other for all of eternity, which apparently, according to them, is worth it all.
But I just can't fathom, because maybe this is just me, because in the present form that we have limitations in the physical body. So maybe this is just because of being in a physical body. And where I am at, I would love to be experiencing the infinite in its grandeur. So maybe this is just me thinking too logically, but if I am experiencing the infinite, I don't want to be experiencing any limitation, because it's almost like it's holding me back. I mean, I guess it could be fun, but I would just want to keep continuing having the infinite, because I think it would be more fun, because you experience everything at the same time.
Are you sure?
This is it. Like I said, I am just asking a question here because I've never heard a concept like that. Because, I mean, from a logical point of view, the only thing that you can give the infinite is limitation. So I get that part. But the question is, why?
Why? Yeah, why? Because this doesn't feel very fun most of the time.
Exactly.
It's a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
What we're calling limitation and fun, what the goddess is saying is fun, is like, what, 99% suffering and 1% fun? Like, I don't know. Maybe sometimes it feels that way.
But this is why I'm thinking, but why? I mean, because I'm saying, okay, let me entertain that. But why would you want to do that? Because the human experience is, like you said, is pretty much all suffering, you know, and the programming has been severe. And, you know, I joke with my mate and I say, let the Anunnaki come. I would say, hey, beam me up, Scotty, I'm ready to go, right? Because it's like, here is just so much limitation. And you're making it seem like it is playful. It is like her way of showing him love. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. That one was a
Well,
left
let's
ball.
do an experiment. How about this?
Okay.
For a moment, just notice your breath
Okay.
and your heartbeat, and it's pulsing, right? There's a pulsation there, breath and heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And then notice, don't look at your foot, but notice your foot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you get an image in your head
Yes, I did.
of foot?
Yes.
And what your foot looks like?
Yes.
Okay. That's secondhand information. We can't trust secondhand information. We're going to go to direct experience here. So go to like the actual direct experience of having a foot and tell me, without your mental construct about your foot, what your foot is made out of. And where does your foot end and the space around it begin?
Without looking at it?
Without looking at it.
Okay. Well, the foot, I guess you could say, it starts at the toe and at the heel.
Okay, that's an image. That's a concept. You just constricted yourself with a concept.
Okay. And then obviously you know that, you know, the foot has a certain width because it has 5 toes. Where does it begin and where does it end? I don't even know how to answer that, to be honest, because it is one unit.
Yeah.
What is it made of?
Is it?
Skin and bones, blood?
I mean, do you even have something called 5 toes? Or is that a mental construct that you have created and now you live inside that mental construct?
I guess this is going to the levels of, does the spoon actually exist?
It is exactly that level. Because your direct experience, when you say, you know, why would infinity want to limit itself? And what I'm really asking you right now is, are you sure you are limited, or are you already infinity? Because where do you end? Where do you end, and where does the space around you begin? And it's really a genuine question. And this is a scientific question. It's not concept. It's not abstract. Oh God, I just got really abstract. I'm actually asking you to do the opposite of being abstract. Abstract would be grabbing an image in your head. I'm asking you, what is your direct, tactile, lived reality that has temperature and texture, temperature and texture?
Very interesting concept. I mean, this, again, I think, I remember a time I had an experience with my higher self. I was looking at myself in the mirror and he was telling me something. And I asked him, well, is this even real? And my higher self replied to me, what is real? Right? So that experiment brought me back to those two memories. That, and in the Matrix movie, is the spoon actually real? So, okay, I see where you're coming from. I guess it's just us thinking in limitation that we create a limitation, and the programming has been that strong to make us believe the limitation is real. So we create it through our thoughts and beliefs. This is why Prentice Mulford said thoughts are things, right? So very, very interesting.
Thoughts are things. Thoughts are things, and then we live inside those things. Now, the goddess represents the pulsation side. That's what she is. This is just a metaphor. Someday, maybe we can get rid of the metaphor. Someday we could be like God and the goddess. They're the exact same thing. Pulsation is stillness and stillness is pulsation. And when we go to the direct experience of what we're right now calling a body in this very ephemeral moment, what we're calling a body is both paradoxically stillness and pulsation. Now, we don't need to go read a textbook to know that. We know that by being here right now and observing it.
Very much so.
So we're equally both, and we just happened to have these representations, these binaries of stillness and movement, and then we have these binaries called God and the goddess. That's all that language means. And doesn't it make a lot of sense that some religions did this thing where they were like, hold on a second, there's not two things here, there's only one thing here? That impulse is kind of extraordinary and beautiful.
You know, it is almost like if language itself is a limitation. And
exactly.
I have a hunch here. Obviously, I don't have any proof of this, but I do think one of the reasons why we don't have much older records is that there was no need for older records because people simply didn't talk. Like physically, they just used to use thought forms, and they used to communicate telepathically. So all information was just shared because thoughts are a lot more encompassing of an entire idea, and words, as we've proved just now with what you were saying, has limitation. So you end up creating binaries, and you creating black and whites, and you creating separation. So
that's right.
It is almost like if maybe 52,000 years ago, we'd never even spoke. We just used to communicate telepathically, and you know, there would be no need for mobile phones and all that kind of stuff because we would just have conversations in our heads with each other hundreds of thousands of miles away, you know? So
or in the future, right? There's a lot of people who think that humans are going in that direction, and they have all sorts of ideas about this. The way that it's described by my favorite teacher of all time, the reason I wrote the book is because of reading his work. His name was Utpaladeva. And he describes it this way. He says, there is the void, the absolute ground of stillness. He happens to call that God. There's this absolute ground of stillness, and pulsation starts to come out of this ground. And it comes out of the ground of stillness in 4 phases. The first phase is stillness itself. which is a phase, and it's an experience, and that's the void. And as pulsation starts to come into being, it's very subtle. It becomes what we might call as intuition. The knowingness that happens underneath thought. And there's a really big difference between intuition and thought, because intuition is a kind of information that comes out of the void. And intuition doesn't care if we listen to it or not. Have you ever noticed that?
Absolutely.
You can have,
absolutely.
Yeah. You have an intuition and it's quiet and it doesn't care. It's like, listen to me or don't listen to me, whatever.
It's true. It's true. You know, right? You started to answer a little bit of my second question. So what you were describing is a framework for understanding reality as 4 layers: the physical form, yes, thought and emotion, intuition, and the void, as you just said. Now, you
yes,
argue that most spiritual traditions fixate on the pause, the void, whilst largely ignoring the other 3. Why is that pattern so persistent across so many different traditions and cultures? And more importantly, what is it actually costing the people who follow those paths?
Right. Okay, this is the latter. So we start in spirituality with the physical world, and we start having these experiences. Where do I end? Where does the space around me begin? I think I might be more than what I can see and touch. I think I might be more than what the elements are telling me here. You know, the elements of this form and my thoughts and my memories. And so we sit down and we meditate, or we do something that pulls our attention inward. And then we start looking at our thoughts and our emotions. So we're actually going into the void. We go through our thoughts and our emotions. And if we're extremely lucky, we have a therapist helping us, because getting through thoughts and emotions is really hard work. And little by little, as we unpack that, oh my goodness, these thought constructs, these emotions are really ruling my reality more than I realized. And then we get under the thoughts and the emotions, and then we find intuition. We all carry intuition. Intuition is not a female trait. This is part of the bias. This is part of the patriarchy. It's giving intuition to female sexed bodies. It's an absolutely arbitrary, actually. It's totally arbitrary, because intuition, everybody's intuitive. And then as we get into the intuition, which is quieter than thought and emotion, we start to access the void. Now, what I was just describing to you a second ago was walking you through the other way around. We have a void, then we have intuition. And then what happens when intuition becomes real pulsation? This is where sound vibration starts to come in. Sound vibration is intuition striking louder. But that's what the goddess represents. In so many cultures, she represents the alphabet. She represents the alphabet. In certain Indian traditions, she starts off breathing herself into reality as the goddess of Vach. And then she becomes, later traditions, she becomes the goddess Saraswati. And then she becomes this really incredible goddess Para, which means the highest. And then she becomes what's called Matrika, the mother, which is the alphabet. Now, you're going to like this, Todd, because you've used the word matrix a couple of times. The word Matrika, this goddess, who is the alphabet, Matrika, is where the word matrix comes from. The English word matrix comes out of the word Matrika.
It makes so much sense.
So she is the matrix. When you say, I feel like, what do you mean? This sounds like the matrix? Yes. And that's what she represents. She is the matrix. That's her name. Her name is Matrika, matrix, which is also cognate with mother and meter, like rhythm and meter.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew this was going to be a very interesting conversation. So, in your Substack article, Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine, published in July 2025, you wrote, and I'm quoting your words here directly, there is, in fact, no such thing as enlightenment at all, close quote. That is a genuinely bold statement to put into the world. What do you mean
I'm
by
just trying
that?
to piss everyone off.
I know. What do you mean by that? And if enlightenment is the wrong goal, what is the right one?
I think I'm just trying to piss everyone off. No, enlightenment doesn't exist. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It doesn't exist. Enlightenment is only a concept that's possible in the patriarchy.
Whew,
that's it.
They can come for you now.
It is a patriarchy created concept. And when I say patriarchy, I say nothing about men. This has nothing to do with men. It has to do with empire. Patriarchy is empire. Now, in order for something called enlightenment to exist, you know what else has to exist?
Darkness?
Not enlightenment.
True.
Darkness.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But we just talked about the matrix and stillness and pulsation being the same thing as stillness. They are the same thing. How can you not be there's no such thing as not enlightened. You are the vibrating, pulsating reality of the universe.
You know what is very, very, I find ironic? When you actually look at when Yeshua became the Christ, it said that the spirit, which was represented by a dove, descended into him, which is really his oversoul that was coming into him. Now, everyone focuses on going up, but no one focuses, like you were saying, is actually coming down. And the spirit represents the feminine, and that is him becoming, realizing who and what he was, right? That was when his eyes fully opened. That's when Yeshua became the Christ, right?
Right.
So
he came into body and he recognized that the stillness is the pulsation, that the great winged bird is his very heart fluttering and being. And then guess what he said? He said, the kingdom of heaven is within.
Yep. Facts.
He understood it's within, its pulsation is the map of reality. And he was so compassionate. There's nobody out there that's higher than somebody else. We are friends to each other. We are walking alongside each other as friends.
True. And this is why I tell people all the time that Yeshua just came to say, hey guys, y'all are living in an artificial construct. Just do what I do, speak like me, and you can get out of here, right? Mm-hmm. And his words were, misused and taken. But the thing is, right, when you actually listen to his words, no matter how much translation they do, the messages is still in there, because he knew that they were going to change his words, and that's why he spoke in parables. And the parables are just so good that the message is still in there, especially for the seeker. Is you can tell that this guy just was like on another level, and he was just coming and saying, hey guys, look, you're all being brainwashed here. Just do these things and you can unlock your brain and connect your heart and your mind together, and you become one. But when you say things like that, the religious people come for me. But
yes,
they'll be.
Yeah, I mean, enlightenment is constructed by a religion because guess what? If there's such thing as enlightenment and you don't have it, you have to come crawling on your hands and knees to me. I'm going to hold the gate to the doors.
Yep.
This is what a priest does. Now, I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. I love the priesthood. I really do. And being a gatekeeper to God comes with major responsibility. And somewhere in there, being a gatekeeper to God was not somebody holding open the temple doors. It was people closing the temple doors and then saying, what are you going to pay me to get in?
Yep. Paying for salvation.
Yeah, we're going to pay. I have the right. You do not have the right. By the way, I'm a man. You're a woman. You have no rights at all. You can't even listen to the sacred text. This is where it gets problematic. It's not in the message. It's in the gatekeeping. It's in the gatekeeping. And concepts like enlightenment perpetuate the gatekeeping. Now, is it possible to immerse yourself so totally into the reality of your heart, to follow in the footsteps of the great sages and to become them and to claim the sovereignty of your heart for yourself? And would somebody else maybe call that enlightenment? I don't really care what somebody calls that. I just call that sovereignty. That I get to be fully alive and lived my lived experience, and my lived experience is not better than yours.
For sure.
And we get to be friends with each other now. Instead of me standing at a podium and telling you how it is, right? Like we get to have a conversation. And what is it like being human for you? Right?
True.
Because that's sacred.
True. Very true.
And that dismantles empire. Empire can only exist when there's a king, a sovereign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not me. I'm not the sovereign. So I have to go crawling on my hands and knees to the sovereign. So what I'm saying, and the revolution here, Todd, is that when we start bringing these principles back, I get to claim curiosity. What if God is curiosity? Well, if God is curiosity, which is my innate ability to pulsate my life, to dismantle my trauma patterns for myself, if that's God, then nobody holds that gate. I hold that gate.
Very true. So let's transition into Kundalini, the energy nobody warned you about. You have made it a professional mission to educate people about Kundalini energy, and you are very precise in distinguishing Kundalini as an energy from the branded yoga system that shares the same name. What is Kundalini energy actually doing when it moves through a person, and why, despite it being a very real and common experience, is it so systematically misunderstood?
Well, partially because there was a guy that claimed the word and then branded it, and now everybody's confused.
Oh, really?
But that's not what Kundalini is, right? That's Kundalini yoga, right? This is one guy's interpretation of Kundalini. And now everybody's like, oh, you mean Kundalini like the yoga? And I'm like, no, I mean Kundalini like the technology that sacred texts have been writing about for 1,500 years. And guess what Kundalini started? Nowadays, people say, oh, Kundalini energy, I know what that is. We get this image in our head. It pops up right away. Anybody who's ever looked at this word, go on Google and look up the word Kundalini. You're going to see a snake. You're going to see a snake coiled around the tailbone 3.5 times. Her mouth is pointing upwards. You're supposed to strike her with a stick violently. That's what practice is. That's what the breathing practices are. That's what the kriyas are. You're aiming to strike that energy, because what happens when you strike a snake with a stick? I don't know. I've never done it. But apparently it makes the snake spring up straight. So we're trying to get Kundalini to rise up the spine, straight. That's the image, but that's not the original image. The original image, she has many names. One of her names is Kundalini. One of her names is Kundali. One of her names is Chandi or Chamunda or Kubjika. She has a lot of different names. But she's described originally as the coiled one. I don't know when she got to the tailbone, but originally in the tantric texts, do you want to know where she originally lived?
Yeah, go on.
The heart.
Wow. Okay.
And she was the coiled sprout inside the heart, which was the infinite point that you are. You are the Big Bang, creating all of reality, transmitting that reality into the rays of your senses. By the way, you don't need to read this in a book. You can actually turn to your heart and really ask it, are you doing this? Creating all of reality, letting it hover for a very brief moment, and then reabsorbing it back again. That is Kundalini. Kundalini is life. She is the coiled one. She's coiled and sprouted, and she springs into being. And that springing into being is what we call being alive. And then she comes and reabsorbs back again at the heart. That's the original, that is how she is originally described.
Wow, I have never heard that one before. I'm going to definitely be listening back to this episode a couple of times. You've described Kundalini awakening as a reorientation of reality, often profound, sometimes violent, and frequently physical. There are a great many men who have had experiences like this through plant medicine, through grief, through extreme training, through spontaneous spiritual opening, and they have been completely alone in processing them because the language simply does not exist in the masculine culture. What does that man do? Sorry.
I think that different traditions have different ways of dealing with the spiritual awakening. And that's what Kundalini is. It's the spiritual awakening. Now, are you asking, like, what does a male sexed body do with an awakening that's being given a female sexed designation or name? Is that what you mean, or is it something else?
Well, basically what happens is that a lot of men, we're not even taught about these things. You find that more in terms of, like, when you go to retreats, is a lot more women, and I've seen this myself, more ceremonies, mostly women. So what happens now is that the curious men that are trying to do the work on themselves, they have these experiences, but a lot of men don't feel it. They have the tools on, like, what does all this mean? Like, what do I do with this information? Because when you do these like ceremonies and stuff like that, you come up feeling, wow, great. You know what I mean? The world is all fake and everything like that. And then you come back into the world and then you struggle, you don't know how to really, like, handle the experience with what you're experiencing, So I was trying to figure, like, what does a man do? Because, all of these things are a lot more space with women. There are women's groups and all that kind of stuff to talk about that. Men don't have any place to go,
I see what you're saying. Wow. Well, here's what I'll say to that. In my experience, men have been equally injured by the patriarchy as women, in a totally different way, but equally injured. Because the patriarchy is a virus. It's a system that says, sit down, be quiet, don't ask questions. It rigidifies our curiosity. So waking up to the subtle, whether you're a man or a woman or a rock or a tree, but coming into the pulsation that is your fundamental right and reality is a kind of sacred internal marriage of opposites. And you can call those opposites male or female. And men are exactly as much God as women are. And women are exactly as much God as men are. And the people who identify as neither or both are exactly as much God as everybody. So that's just sort of how I take that. Now, specific problems that come up for men around their trauma responses with regards to patriarchal conditioning, I have worked with enough students who identify as male. And one of the things that they have shared with me, and I would love to hear your take on this, Todd, I think this is the work you do, is finding men's groups has been extremely powerful and life-changing for them to have a safe space themselves to do this deconditioning and deconstructing work, because they too have internalized all sorts of stories that are untrue. Like, who says that a man isn't intuitive? That, to be intuitive is a female trait, to be soft is a female trait. Who said so? Who said that to be logical, to be fierce, to be fierce, my God, or seriously, is a masculine trait? We've just kind of like taken a list of traits, and some have gone left and some have gone right, and it's been totally arbitrary.
Yeah. So what I see from coaching men, talking to a lot of men, is that because of the historical sort of like patriarchal system where it's sidelined women for the most part. And what's happened is that it was like one extreme where women were so sort of like put under the thumb. And now, as women have become less under the thumb and basically not under the thumb, you had a lot of support for women to help them through that. But what's happened is that the pendulum has gone so far to one side that men, like you rightly said, they need help as well. But there's no one out there. And if you speak to most men out there, if they have a problem or an issue and you ask them, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? They pretty much say no one. There are hardly any male groups out there that focus on male improvement. And we have very few proper male representatives and role models out there as well. And that is one of the reasons why I have this show, and I focus a lot on masculinity, but I do also lean into femininity as well, because you can't have one or the other. But because I can speak very well on the issues that affect men, most men feel alone, and they just don't, like, for example, most men suffer in silence. We do. Like, women talk to other women, they talk to anyone that will listen. Most men don't. Unless you have like a best mate that you can really turn to, there's no one. And what that does is that it doesn't allow us to feel because if you feel, then there's no one there to actually, like, I don't want to say hold your hand, but just to lend an ear, because most other men as well would just say, hey, mate, just sort it out yourself, because that's just what we do, right? You have some good mates that will like listen to you and stuff like that, but for the most part, men, we have no one. And this is why I do what I do, to try to show men, well, no, there's a corner over the internet for you, and we mix a bunch of stuff together and to help you to become a better version of yourself, be better role models, fathers, husbands, and boyfriends, friends, because there's just hardly, there are groups, but hardly is almost like maybe at least 20-1 women to men, right? So like every ceremony that I've ever done, majority women. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just one of those people that I guess I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I just said, I'm just going to try anything and just jump right in. But that was just my character trait, right? But a lot of men, they wouldn't even embrace these things, So it's a big challenge.
But that's internalized, isn't it? That's an internalized message. Somewhere, someone told them, this is what makes a man. I remember the moment my father said this to my son, boys don't cry.
Yeah, pretty much that's the conditioning that we get as boys. Yeah.
Yes. And my son was like 2.5 or maybe 3 at the time. And I said to my father, if you want to see your grandson ever again, you won't say that ever again. He really heard me because I really meant it. And I think I do see a generation right now as a mother. This is the mother side of me. I see a generation where it's getting okay for little girls and little boys to share their feelings. How does that make you feel? Where do you feel that in your body? I teach this in my book. This is an exercise. When you have an emotion, we can do this right now. Men can do this right now. When you're feeling something, rage, frustration, joy, excitement, where do you feel it in your body? We are not floating heads on sticks. Our being is layered. And if we are deeply alone and lonely, chances are we've purchased a belief. Somebody has told us at some point in our life that we're not allowed to feel our feelings, and we agreed. Now, the good news is if I agreed to something at some point in my life, if I made an agreement, then I can unmake that agreement. It's within my power to change that. But it takes a lot of courage, Todd, and it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of bravery to look for a group and to say, I know, and if I can't find a men's group, maybe I create one. And if I can't find a women's group, maybe I create one. And if I can't find the thing in the world and I'm so broken that I don't even know how to move, then maybe I make a friend who, like, we can do it together. Or I join Todd's group, right? Because here's Todd and you're out there open source on the internet. And it requires work. It really does. Because we didn't get into this mess alone. We got into the mess because at some point in our lives, and possibly we were so young that we don't even remember it happening. But at some point in our lives, we agreed. We took on a pain message and we agreed to it.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And this is why, like, I think that the conversation and the Overton window is changing now, where men are starting to realize that they need to work on themselves, and we've been lied to, because men have feelings, but society punishes us when we have feelings, because you know, we think like, okay, well, this is how it works. Well, I just will react to that, and I will just do something to not get hurt and just continue. And then it becomes a pattern, then it becomes a belief, and then it passes from one generation to the next, and it never stops, you know?
And it creates all the violence we see on earth.
Absolutely. Because
every single act of violence out there is an emanation of that.
Because hurt men hurt people. Right?
And hurt women.
True.
Women who have internalized the patriarchy are more vicious gatekeepers for the patriarchy from what I've seen and in my research than men are. Women who have a very deep patriarchal wound become what I call the Athena archetype, where women actually will go out there, the ones that have internalized the patriarchy, and somewhere they bought the belief also, and they will punish women at every chance.
Yeah,
so when we use the term patriarchy, we have to understand that this, maybe we need a new word, because men and women perpetuate it, and men and women suffer from it. Now, what is it really? It's a trauma response that shuts down our curiosity. And it's kind of that simple. It's a trauma response that shuts down our curiosity.
I like the way you describe patriarchy as just empire, because it actually is. It's an empire designed to control your thoughts and beliefs. And it affects both men and women, you know?
Right.
Now, in your July 2025 Substack piece, you described the divine masculine as the death principle, the principle of stillness, finality, cessation. You write that achievement from the masculine perspective is a permanent state of no-thingness. That is almost certainly not how any man in this audience has ever heard masculinity described. Can you break that down? And why does understanding the masculine as the death principle actually free a man rather than diminish him?
Yeah. Well, it's what I've been talking about. The divine masculine isn't men. The divine masculine is the stillness principle. The divine feminine is the pulsation principle. And what are we as humans? We're a mixed bag. We get to be both. And that is the freedom. The freedom is sometimes I get to crave stillness. Now, in my more masculine moments, I really crave stillness. I want to be in a quiet place. I want to seek out a quiet moment. In my more feminine moments, if I want to really dance with the divine feminine within me, I pulsate. I want to engage in pulsation in art or creation or writing or speaking or beauty or laughing or friendship or sex. These are just, this is stillness and movement dancing. It's stillness and movement dancing. If most cultures don't have a problem with this, right? If you go to India and you go to a place where the goddess is worshipped, men are worshiping the goddess. There's no tension there. There's no like, oh, well, she's female and I'm not allowed to worship her. So this is the internalized patriarchy. The question is really, what have we done to ourselves where like the divine masculine principle was somehow given to men to uphold it? And by the way, who told us that?
That's a good question.
And then the divine feminine, right? And then the divine feminine was given to female sexed bodies. I mean, that's just nuts. That's just nuts because we're all of it.
It's true. And the thing is, you so well described both the masculine and the feminine very well just now. So what would you say is the real cost of that misalignment between the two energies?
We are the cost. My lived experience is what I pay in devastation and suffering. And it's because when I buy into these concepts, I am shutting down my curiosity and my reverence and my devotion. Now, when I have curiosity and I say to myself, okay, I have a pain pattern here. What is it? Where am I feeling my pain in my body? Where have I agreed to a story? Now, usually the really major capital T traumas that we carry are very simple. They're not complicated phrases. They're usually something here. I bet you anything. I'm going to say one. I'm going to say 4 of them, and you're going to recognize them. So one is I'm not worthy of love. One is I'm too much. I should be less me.
Yep.
One is I'm not good enough.
Yep.
I'm not good enough. So I'm too much and I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of love. And let's see, the 4th one.
I'm a failure.
I'm a failure. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not succeeding. Goal. Mm-hmm. Yes, I can't succeed. Mm-hmm. I can't succeed. That's it. Beautiful.
I see these patterns a lot.
These are the core human patterns. This is get to the bottom of your trauma. Now, pain and real devastation and grief, valid human experience, real grief. But what causes us the kind of crippling trauma is usually when we've grabbed onto one of these core beliefs, and it's the operating system. All of our decisions are being made on the operating system. The decisions aren't being made from my heart. The decisions are being made from my operating system, which is the shield I put over my heart, because what my heart is really telling me, in my case, it's you're too much, Cynthia. You're too much. Be less you. Now, somebody else, it's going to be something else. But for me, that just happens to be my delightful little story. How fun for me. So And we all carry these around. And then we're so tender in those places that you start getting kind of close to that place. And some people freak out. You start getting kind of close to that place and you get into the live wire, and people can go into flying rages when somebody starts touching the shielding, not even the core pattern, but the actual shield that's around the pattern.
Oh yeah, I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot, especially in relationships as well. So before we go deeper, we're going to take a quick break here to say, if what Cynthia is sharing is landing for you, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a fire emoji in the comments if this is hitting home for you. We put out conversations like this so that they reach people who genuinely need them. Share this episode with one person in your world who has ever told you that they feel spiritually stuck or like they're doing all the right things and still something isn't moving. That's exactly who this is for, and it genuinely helps these conversations reach more people. Follow us at Instagram at Adrenal_246, at the Conscious Man 7 podcast, or Todd Cave on Facebook to see what we get up to during the week, to see how I merge fitness, consciousness, and spirituality to help people not only get into the best shape of their lives, but also level up in other areas of their life. Don't forget to check out the sponsor of our show, The Kembo, at thekembo.com to get yourself some cool orgonite pyramids, tower busters, and jewelry, which create orgone energy, which is the life source energy and neutralizes that nasty EMF waves that we are constantly bombarded with. Use coupon code CM7 to get 10% off your order. Now back to Cynthia. So here's a question most interviewers won't ask. Many popular divine feminine movements in the wellness and spiritual space appear to be not about elevating feminine at all, but about demonizing the masculine, rejecting structure, and dismissing the very qualities you describe as the divine masculine's genuine gifts. As someone with 20 plus years in this world who studied those lineages at an academic level, do you recognize that pattern? And if so, what does pseudo-feminine teaching actually look like versus the real thing as you found in the Shakta Tantra tradition you work within?
I agree. I totally agree. Was that a question or a statement? Because I heard that as a statement. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, that we are so in pain that we have, in the past 100 years, we've been trying to bring these principles back, right? Oh my gosh, I have internalized so many pain stories and structures. I need to do something about it. That's what spirituality is. Now, when I started writing Embodying the Goddess, the statistics showed that 20% of Americans were spiritual but not religious. I don't know what the global number is. This was just me looking at America, United States. Now, when we went to print, it was 25%. That was 3 years later. Now, when I go on the internet and I look it up, it's 27%. People are jumping ship. I've internalized a lot of pain patterns. I need to do something about it. Now, it just so happens that a lot of those pain patterns are social roles, socially constructed roles. Women are supposed to be this way. Men are supposed to be this way. And as we began to challenge those roles, we've turned to certain spiritual technologies. We have decided to reclaim our sex and our sexual freedom. Who says that I have to be, this version of chastity or this version of, pious to be successful as a, sexually viable female, this kind of a thing, right? So what I see, especially as somebody who practices Tantra, classical Tantra, is that Tantra became a technology applied to the modern era where people started craving sexual freedom. And it was led by women, the Tantra movement. Some men, but a lot of women. However, we are doing this as a method and means to address our trauma. Now, I think that's worthy. I think it's worthy to take on practices and study spiritualities that have us looking at our conditioning patterns. But it's what you just said. There's still a major undercurrent in spirituality where we are so transcendence driven that the transcendence bias puts us into whiplash. Am I doing this practice to become embodied, or am I doing this practice to sit, meditate, and see that I am not that? Yeah, right? We're being given two opposite. We're being taught to let it go. That's let it go spirituality. And then we're also being taught to come back into our bodies and claim our sexual freedom, etc., and our voice. And it's creating whiplash for people. That's why I wrote the book. So what you're talking about is a process that sometimes needs a little more process, a little more processing. Because when I go on the internet, on social media, and somebody is having an orgasm, a female is having an orgasm, and she's calling it sexual freedom, but now we have to buy into her program. So she's selling something. What I see is female sexual exploitation that's been internalized. Now, you might disagree with that, or your listeners might disagree with that. But if somebody is having an orgasm on screen or gyrating in such a way that suggests an orgasm, and they're selling a product, to me, that is not an expression of freedom. That's an expression of internalized misogyny. And this is where the modern spiritual movement, I think we're in the middle of it. We're not at the end of it. We're not like, oh, have you really done this work? Now, we do need to do the sexual work, and we do need to decondition ourselves, men and women, and, everybody in between. All sexes, all sexual orientations. And there's still a lot of exploitation out there. And sometimes people are not calling it exploitation, they're calling it freedom. And it's very confusing for people.
And I find there's a lot of misandry out there as well, because a lot of these, now what I see a lot online, because I'm online a lot, is a lot of pseudo-feminine spirituality energy of the goddess and what's not. The words are fine, but what I am seeing is misandry at its best, where they're demonizing men. Men are the source of all problems. Men are no good, and all men are bad. And they're talking about all of these buzzwords like embodiment and enlightenment and freedom and my truth, etc., and channeling abundance. But when you get to look at the core, it's misandry at its best. It's victim mentality. It's blaming men. And basically, I think that, because of that, we have a lot of polarization on the internet. And that is really causing men to hate women and women to hate men. And it's just getting worse.
I'm not sure if it's getting worse. I think that when people do trauma work, it has to get a little worse before it can get better. If you're going to put blood flow into the tumor, it's gonna fight back for a little bit. And I think that there is so much rage for so many people, men, women, so many people, that people are just working out their pain and their rage. Now, the problem is when we say that we're done with our process, when we're not done with our process. And here's a hint, no one's done with their process.
True.
Right? If you're alive, you're in a process.
True.
So the problem is when you're like, well, here's what I've come to, and here's what it looks like. And for $444.44, you too can, this is the problem is We are verbs. We are in constant motion. We are constantly processing. The second I see one of my internal trauma patterns and it really feels digested and I've become wiser from it, how much rest do I really get before the next one comes up? Sometimes they overlap.
True. Facts.
Right? Yeah. So first, I don't really want to judge somebody who's out there doing the work if they're actually doing the work. And if they have to scream and shout to the wide anonymous universe of the internet, okay. And also, let's talk back. Let's talk back like what you're doing right now. Hey, psst. Hey, are you standing in this? Is this real truth for you? Or is this rage built on, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm not worthy of love? Is it demanding, look at me? Is it that, right? Because these are all trauma responses. And we can help each other through our trauma responses by, first of all, allowing them, right? Just allowing them, oh, hey, there it is. I see it. Okay. And then also by not falling into the trap, because in order for there to be a victim, there has to be a perpetrator. There has to be a perpetrator.
Agreed. That's
what victim is. The victim can only exist if there's a perpetrator. And guess who suffers? Everyone. Everyone. We all do. The second I claim a victim, for me, I've just created a perpetrator.
True.
That's my personal experience. Maybe other people feel differently. Maybe people feel like, no, I have to claim my victimhood and I'm going through a process. And okay. And the second you create a perpetrator, you actually become both.
True. No one's taking responsibility for themselves, just shifting blame onto someone else, Right.
So I think that the world of therapy and therapists, I'm going to say something here that might alienate people. And again, I apologize, but I guess I don't care. But I think therapy is far more advanced than spirituality. Our therapy world is embodied. Pay attention to what you're thinking. Pay attention to your activations and your triggers. What are they really telling you? And I think our spiritual world is way behind on the curve. Instead, what are we doing in our spirituality? One, we are telling people to sit down and let it go. What does that even mean, let it go? Go where? How about I turn toward what I'm noticing and digest it and work on it? And see what the trigger is under that. See what the activation is under that. I think the world of therapy has checks and balances. The world of spirituality has no checks and balances. We have gurus. Look what they have done. We've just recreated a king. We've just given sovereignty to a person again. So we have picked up the patriarchy and we've put it into spirituality. We are fleeing religion in the first place. We are fleeing the patriarchy. We're spiritually but not religious. And then what do? We go from patriarchy A to patriarchy B. We internalize it by sitting and meditating and letting it go. So when I say embodying the goddess, what I mean is pay attention to your activations. Where are you vibrating in a way that the mirror of life is asking you to pay attention? Because you are God. You are God. Who's looking through your eyes right now? Who's touching through your skin right now? Now, if that's the truth, and I know it's true, and you know it's true, the deep, deep part of you knows that you are whole and complete and that you are divine. Now, if that's true, isn't it worth fighting for that? And shouldn't our spirituality maybe start paying attention and turning toward and investigating embodiment? And so maybe in our pathway of embodying, we have to go through these phases of like orgasming on social media. Maybe that's part of the process. I don't know, but I'm here to try to push us a little further. Maybe we can go a little past that. We've been doing that for what, like 20 years, something like that? I think
Something
it's
like
time.
that, yeah.
I think it's time. I think we can go beyond it. Tell me about your intuition. Tell me about your dreams. Tell me about your dreams, right? When you start going past this and the trauma patterning, guess what? Your intuition wakes up. When people come to me now and they're having Kundalini awakening, they're telling me about their dreams, or they're telling me about an animal, an owl that started to visit them, or a mountain lion encounter. Like, people are having transmission experiences where the mirror of life is reflecting the nature of their heart back to them. And I think we are there.
Okay. So Carl Jung named the unconscious feminine in a man the Amena, and the unconscious masculine in the woman the Amenas. You work within Shakta Tantra tradition, which maps the same territory through Shiva and Shakti. Where do Jung and the Tantric framework agree on the inner marriage of these forces, and where does the Tantric understanding go significantly further than anything Jung articulated?
Well, where did Jung learn it from? What did Jung study?
That one I'm not sure.
Tantra.
Really?
Yeah, and then he didn't give it credit. He just took it as his.
Okay.
So
This is interesting.
Okay, fine. For his time period, right? It was totally normal to appropriate and not give credit where credit was due. But he did it. He did it. He had Kundalini awakening, and then he went and studied sacred scriptures, and then he taught them as though he made it up. He didn't make that up.
This is fascinating because no one talks about that, you know.
Yeah, they do. I have friends who study him who are professors, PhDs, and he is what they study, and they don't want to say it out loud, but they're willing to say it behind closed doors. They're like, oh yeah, no, we know. They're like, we know.
Very interesting. So
yeah, Shiva and Shakti. He went and studied that. That's where he got that language.
Okay. So they use the Amena and the Amenas, or he just coined those terms for, so that
he coined the terms, he translated it. He was translating it for his time period to his audience. And, you know, the bone I have to pick with Carl Jung is that as brilliant as he was and as great as he was at bringing the goddess back into the fold of conversation from a psychology perspective, he still called her an archetype, which puts her in a box. And I don't think she's an archetype. She can be an archetype when she wants to be an archetype. She can be a pattern in the whole when she wants to be a pattern in the whole. But the goddess and God, they're not archetypes. They are the whole. They are the whole. She is the whole. What is sound vibration? Is that an archetype, or is that life? Can't it be both? I think it's time we move on. We need to move on because we need to understand these divine principles as both the archetype, and I use archetypes in my book, but I really challenge the notion that the goddess is an archetype. She's not, unless she wants to be. She can be a pattern, but she is the whole. She is all of life.
Okay.
And I think we're there. I really, like I said, as our intuition wakes up, we are there.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift on the planet coming. It's happening all now. I can see it. The conversation I have confirm it. So let's transition to psychedelics, peak states, and the failure to integrate. So there's a growing population of people who have had profound peak experiences through plant medicine, breath work, deep meditation, received what felt like direct messages from their higher self or from source, had genuine moments of revelation, and then returned to exactly the same life they had before. Nothing changed, from your perspective as someone who teaches integration, why does that happen? And is there something in the structure of the experience itself that makes integration harder than people expect?
I think I've talked a lot about the transcendence hangover, and yes, about what that really is. So what I hear in this question, and in a second I'm going to turn it back around to you because I really want to know what you have to say about this, is another invitation to get back to our curiosity. Curiosity is integration. Integration is when we get to live with curiosity. Oh, I just had a reaction to something that person said. Maybe I'm totally triggered right now to what Cynthia is saying, and I'm not saying that what I'm saying is totally right. I'm not saying that it's wrong. But what I am interested in is if you're having a reaction to it, if you're activated, ooh, what is that? Now I'm curious. Like, what is that in you? And for me, it's the awakening of curiosity that is integration. Now, I want to know what your experience is because I have a feeling you've dealt with this before.
So I think that from doing several ceremonies, I think that most people are not really told from the beginning how important the integration is until after they have the experience. Now, I have spoken to some people that is one of the things that they definitely do. They give people homework like to do after the experience. And you do have conversations and stuff with the shaman afterwards. But I think that what happens is that it's almost become like, because people are so focused on helping people, is trying to get as many people in through the doors to help them, right? And I think while the intentions are good to want to help people, I think the part of the integration, which is the most important part to me and in my experience, is a little bit overlooked. Or when I say overlooked, is not leaned into enough, where there should be like an extensive period that it is a follow-up with people to check in to see how they're doing and to offer like coaching and stuff like that. And I think is partly maybe because so many more people are doing it now, that because these people are just like individuals, they don't have the capacity maybe to deal with so many people. So there maybe have to be maybe a structural flaw where they don't have like coaches or people can follow up, to help people. Because when you do have these profound experiences, you come away almost like walking on clouds. And then within a week, you're back to the same old patterns. And this is why like I have check-in calls with my clients, because I find that, and I check in with them very regularly via message as well, because I know that they need the support. So I think in my part, I think is partly structural, where there's just not enough support after a psychedelic experience, or going on a retreat, or going on whether it's meditation retreat or breathwork retreat and stuff like that. So for my part, I think is more structural than anything else.
I'm willing to take your money to come to my retreat, but I'm not willing to give you my cell phone number and email address and follow up with you for 6 months after my retreat when you really have a spiritual experience. And when that spiritual experience turns into a crisis that you no longer know how to deal with.
Yeah.
You know how often I've seen that?
Yeah.
I get those people. Those people reach out to me, help. I had this experience on retreat. I don't even know who I am anymore. I had an experience, and like my teacher didn't even respond.
Yeah. And people start to feel alone, and this is why they go back to the bad habits, because they're only going back to what makes them feel comfortable, and there's no real support. So this is why, like, I always I guess in my case, I'm a little bit different, where I've been doing the journey on my own for so long that I'm able to, I guess I could say, coach myself in through it, because I apply a lot of different techniques, and sometimes I will have like one or two friends that I can talk to, because it's a matter sometimes of just like sharing ideas and thoughts and experiences, and like I getting a different perspective. But for the most part, like for me, I get downloads, I get dreams, the voice, because I always call it is the voice. The voice will talk to me, and in the beginning, it doesn't make sense. But then after a week or 2 weeks or maybe a month, it's like, oh, okay, I now understand why that was shown to me or why I was told this and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit of a different in experience where I've never had that follow up. But because I consume so many books and I have so many different conversations with people, I get to get my own realizations from talking to people like you, you know? So, but for the average person, I don't think there's enough support there. You know?
I love that you get a voice and that you have dreams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The voice speaks
That's
to
part
me.
of integration. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Someone said to me that I am clairaudient because I only refer to it as the voice. I don't get like visions. I do get dreams, but I don't get like visions. 99% of the time is the voice. Right?
Is it out of one ear? Do you hear it only in one ear?
It's always loud. I would have to think about it, but it's always loud.
Okay. So it's not coming from one side. It's loud.
Yes. I'll have to, now that you've asked that question, I'll have to pay attention the next time because
yeah, some people hear it very specifically. Oh, it's coming from my left ear. It comes in sometimes voices when people are when people have clear audience, a lot of times it comes in. That's part of what they report. It comes in through one.
Okay, I'll have to take notice next time. So from your work with people navigating this territory, what is the single most common mistake you see people making in their integration process after a peak experience?
Mistake. Gosh, that's a big word. Mistake. I don't think anything in life is a mistake. I think everything is an opportunity to listen more and to grow more. And I think that there's pain that happens when we don't do that.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I do think that we do make mistakes. However, at the same time, I think that first you make the mistakes, then you get the pain, then you get the lesson, and then you get the wisdom. So I see it as being part of the process, but I think that we do make mistakes, but I do think that there's the invitation then to learn from it, like what you're saying.
Right, right. Yeah, it's just so hard when we use that word mistake because it feels so final, right? Like, okay, so we make mistakes, but how about this? How about this? If we could reframe internally this word mistake and treat it as an opportunity to investigate and to learn, then yeah, I think that I really feel like nothing I've ever experienced was a mistake. I think that if I were to frame something as a mistake, now I've really messed up, right? Like I mess up and correct and fix and listen and listen and listen and come back again and revisit. I am very responsible in this way. I think what I'm trying to highlight is shame, because if let's say, oh, I really messed up in the way that I came back from that peak experience, it could create like a ripple or a trauma of I'm doing it all wrong. And for some people, they might stop doing their practice entirely. For some people, they might go back into old patterns. I think for me, it's really important to pay attention to our activations. I don't call them triggers really, because, and then that reframes the whole thing, then it's not a mistake. But let's say this word trigger always relates to a weapon. A trigger can only exist on a weapon. And once the trigger is unleashed, once it's pulled, whatever comes flying out of the trigger can't be stopped. But an activation can be stopped. You can slow an activation down and look at it. And an activation isn't a weapon. So this is where the language gets really important. Instead of the word mistake, could we say something like, what are the ways that we maybe could pay attention to opportunities where we create suffering within ourselves? We have pain activations and we miss them. Well, guess what? They're going to come back again. If I have an activation or a pattern that I'm not willing to look at right now, chances are life's going to give it to me again, and probably louder the next time.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately.
Absolutely. Now, your work places the nervous system at the center of lasting spiritual change. Most men I speak to understand the concept of embodiment intellectually. They can tell you what it means, but they have never actually felt it. The nervous system has never been included in their practice. What is the genuine entry point for a man who wants to begin working with his nervous system as a spiritual and transformative tool?
The first thing I teach in my book is a phrase: notice what you notice. It's the most important thing I teach. That's it. Notice what you notice. Now, that sounds simple. Sometimes it is simple. Okay, I notice the backs of my knees are sweating because I've been sitting here for a long time. Could be as simple as that. Notice what you notice. Or notice what you notice could be noticing an activation. Now, if I follow that activation through its twists and turns, memories might come up, memories of my childhood, memories of past lives, memories of dreams, memories of ancestors. I don't know what's going to come up. But sometimes an activation, and notice what you notice, is like you become a cat on the trail of something. You smell it and you follow it. Or, like one of those big prey cats, they're really good at that. Or there's a lot of animals that have these really refined noses. You become like that with notice what you notice. And nervous system, nervous system regulation is just code word for that. Nervous system regulation is code for notice what you notice. And a lot of times we need help. We need help to notice what we notice. We need a therapist, or sometimes a shaman, but maybe one that we can reach out to, or a group, a spiritual group, something like that. That's really how I would address that. Notice what you notice. All roads are going to lead back to your body, because guess what? You have a body.
And you're in it.
Your thoughts are coming from your body. Your emotions are coming from your body. I don't know if you knew that. Well, where else are they coming from? You know what I mean? So we can follow them. Notice what you notice. We can follow it back to its source. And it's not fun.
True.
At a certain point, you realize that doing the work, which is almost the worst thing in the whole world to do the work, it's just awful, is better than not doing the work.
Yeah.
It's more painful not to do it than to do it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. On your events page, you describe using what you call amplification meditations, turning toward, making bigger, embodying, as a direct practice for countering the transcendence bias and bringing the divine feminine into life. Can you walk us through what that actually looks and feels like? what happens in the body when you turn toward rather than away?
Are we going to do a practice? Is that what you'd like? I'd love to do a practice.
Well, I mean, how long is it going to take?
Okay. I'll tell you what, Todd. Here's an amplification practice, the opposite of let it go spirituality. Let's see. Notice one sensation in your body. Just one. Just choose one sensation and notice it. I know there's a lot there, but just notice one.
Okay.
It can be, you can label it. It can have a label. It can be pleasant or unpleasant. It can be nagging. It can be hot or warm. It can be cool, but like it has qualities to it. So start to investigate, like, are there qualities here? Maybe there's a lack of sensation in this place. Maybe there's a lack of temperature. So that's just as interesting. Maybe there's a rhythm, a speed. Maybe it's fast. Maybe it's slow. But start to like really hone in on this one thing that you're noticing in a physical sensation in your body. And whatever those qualities are, make them bigger, exaggerate them, make them bigger. Turn toward them. And as you make them bigger, see what new qualities arise. Is there the absence of something? Is there a temperature? Warm, cool? Is there a texture? Rough, smooth? And then make them bigger again. And as you make the sensation bigger, even bigger, a little bit bigger, as you make it a little bit bigger, it's almost like you could enter into a room. And it's like you could put your fingers against the walls of the room and really see what's inside that room. Sensation, temperature, texture, speed, rhythm. Maybe there are thoughts associated with the physical sensation. Maybe there are emotions related to the physical sensation. Maybe there are not. Maybe there's a void of thoughts or a void of emotion. Maybe there's an intuition related to the physical sensation. But keep going toward it, and now make it bigger. At a certain point, you're going to keep amplifying and making the sensations bigger and bigger, and turn toward them more and more. And they start to lose their qualities. I mean, they're still there. You could go back down into the smallness of them, and there's warmth or coolness. There's still temperature and texture. But at a certain point, as you get bigger and bigger, the qualities start to disappear. The labels, the qualities. And it becomes something like raw energy, pure sensation, raw sensation, pure sensing, pulsation.
Wow, I got goosebumps, man.
Okay. Pulsation, pure sensing, pure energy. And then from that place of raw energy and pure sensing, you can actually scan the whole landscape. And you can come back into your body from any doorway. And then you can actually follow yourself back into your vibrating, layered, and limited form.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
And then you get to reenact the goddess. which is embodiment, which is coming into body. And you get to be God, vibrating into form from the raw field of energy.
Okay. I feel a lot of tingling in my body. It's very, very, very awesome. Okay, I need to.
Imagine doing that for a half hour.
I know. I need to catch my bearings now. I was a little bit outside now. Okay, so you use the Vijnana Bhairava.
The Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, is that?
Yes.
So now you're channeling because that practice is in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra.
Okay, so that's a text which contains 112 contemplation techniques as a central framework in a 300-hour teacher framing you co-lead at Yoga Soup. For a man listening right now who has no background in Sanskrit, ancient Indian texts, or philosophy, why does any of this matter? What does a 1,000-year-old tantric text actually have to offer a modern man who wants to be a better human being, better father, better partner?
You just did one of the practices out of that text. So the best person to answer that question is you. You think that that would be interesting or valuable?
For sure, because the way I would describe it is like being in a state of no mind. And it reminds me of like, because I do calisthenics, so I do handstands. And what I realized that in order to do handstands well, I have to go into a state similar to that, where I am no mind. I'm just not there. And that's the only way I can hold it for a long time. And just now, I had this tingling feeling in my body. And I had, for a few seconds there, I was like, I couldn't even pronounce the word correctly because I was not even fully back into my body because I was kind of like outside of it. So I would say it would add great value to a man and to a woman anyway, to be honest. But I'd like to focus on men because I think we have a lot of work to do, but I digress. It would give you a lot of clarity in your mind, or calm in the mind, I would say. Because I think that we have so much going on in our minds at the same time that we kind of like, we lose our purpose. Like, what am I actually doing all of this for? Because your identity becomes going to work, paying bills, and taking care of family. No, those things are important. Those things are your responsibility. But those things are not what define you. And I think that a practice like that now would help you to realize, well, actually, I am more than those things. Because I think that is people's identity. And yes, unfortunately, that hologram that they've created for themselves is the thing that makes us have the most suffering, you know? So that practice would help you to be in that state of no mind, even if it's for a few minutes, because you're giving the mind a rest, because the mind is just always going, you know? So,
and when you track yourself back into form, it's extremely important to see that you are the creative agent. Every single one of us is a creator. Every single person I know is creative in some way. Now, their creativity might be the ones that we think of, like writing or art or poetry, whatever that is. But there's so many forms of creativity. Sometimes creativity is making your breakfast eggs just the way that is an art form for you. Sometimes it's having that house plant that you have a relationship with, right? So there are so many ways that we are creators. And when you do these types of practices where you become the field of energy and then you get to become the creator and the one that lives those energies, then isn't that really what makes a life beautiful? It's not these peak experiences. Peak experiences are fine and they're instructive, but I'd like my whole life to be an act of remembering my creation, my power, my ability to vibrate and pulsate.
Definitely, definitely. So, Dr. Richard Miller, the founder of the IRES Institute, described your book, Embodying the Goddess, as a profound exploration of the divine feminine and a call to action for our personal and collective healing. He described it as both poetic and practical. For the person listening right now who recognizes themselves in the transcendence trap, who has been going up and out for years but never been taught how to come back, what is the single most important first step you offer them in the book?
Notice what you know.
I had a feeling you were going to say that,
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you? Please still buy my book, but that is what it says.
I had a strange feeling right that I knew the answer, but I was like,
Did you?
Yeah.
See, it's not like a complicated message. Notice what you notice.
No,
It'll change your life, but it's not complicated.
It is almost like what I call, I can't say I call it, but this is what I use because other people call it that, is being the observer. And I have found that in my sort of like growth and evolution to who I am today, I very much have had to use the observer to get me through the most difficult parts of my journey, because I would literally be having the experience and then be on the outside looking at myself, back at myself, having the experience and analyzing the experience at the same time. And that's the only way I was able to cope with it, because it was just too hard and too painful. And that is very much like what you're saying. Notice what you're noticing. And the only way you can notice what you're noticing is to be the third person, is to be the observer, So it's quite simple.
You have to be the observer, and then at some point you get to marry the observation. You get to become the flowing verb of reality.
Okay. So the subtitle of your book is How to Awaken Curiosity and Reverence on the Spiritual Path. You've described the goddess herself in plain English as precisely those two qualities, curiosity and reverence. Of all the words available, love, presence, compassion, awareness, why those two specifically? What do curiosity and reverence do that other spiritual qualities don't?
Curiosity is our birthright. You don't need to buy it. You don't need to learn it. Children have it. People across an entire lifespan have it. People have it that are not religious. People have it that are religious. It's our birthright. It can be shut down and it can be opened back up again. To me, curiosity is the goddess. That's how she operates. She's pulsation. And reverence is our right as well. But what's really sad is when we throw away the conditioning part of religion, the part of religion that we're trying to deal with, that the part that we feel has conditioned us or shut us down. A lot of us throw out our faith too. We have a really poor relationship with this word faith and reverence. It's like we throw out our faith with the bathwater. Which is so sad, because faith is the whole thing that we're trying to wake up when it comes to the heart. And you can have faith. You don't have to have faith in the sovereign that you're supposed to give all of your power to. But you can have faith in your power. You can have faith in your own heart. You can have faith in your ability to get curious. You can have faith in your ability to notice what you notice. You can have reverence for life. I think having reverence and curiosity are the great gems of being alive. Really that, for me. What do you think?
Well, what I would say is that what you said just now in terms of faith really resonated with me, because, and I've said this to people in my inner circle, that I think that my lesson here is actually to have faith, because I was always a doer, massive taking of action. So I didn't have faith. I just had taken action. But what it is now is that you can only do that to a certain point, and then you have to have different skills to get to a different level, because this is how it works, right? You get a certain set of skills to get you a level, and then you have to develop others. And for me, having faith is one of the most difficult things, because I am a doer. You tell me, eat this, Todd, you'll get big. Do this exercise, you'll get strong. Sleep in that particular position, you'll be fully rested. That is me. Now, for me, I realized that my lesson, one of the big lessons for me, is having faith that, okay, I will be told what to do, guided how to do it, instead of just relying on the brute force of just doing. So I have aligned taking action. So that for me is one of the most difficult things, like to have faith, because I know things will work out, because I know once I do it, it will work, because I have confidence in myself. But it's that part now of the faith where it's like, I call it like the flow part now, whereas like the trusting, whereas like that part, because I used to be a civil engineer. So I am very mathematical, very structured, very ordered, follow a plan, don't deviate from the plan. If you tell me to eat rubber to be successful, I will eat rubber to be successful. That is my mindset. However, what I've been being shown is that you have to have faith that things will line up and work in the way they're supposed to, which has been a real challenge, but I'm getting a lot better at it. So when you talked about faith just now, that was like, yeah, you know what I mean? That is huge for me. Huge. So let's get you on this one. I want you to speak directly to the man listening right now. He's done the therapy, maybe the breath work, maybe the plant medicine ceremonies. He has read the books, done the course, followed the programs. He's done all the right things, and yet something essential is still missing. Can't quite put his finger on it, but there's a hollow feeling in his chest that won't go away. What do you say directly to that man?
Stop doing the work and notice what you notice.
Wow. Short, simple, succinct, and direct.
Yeah, if you're doing the work and you've done all those things and you still feel hollow on the inside, notice what you notice and stop doing that.
Wow. Okay. The thing is, right, we have to buy our book, but that is just the principle in the book. But please, guys, going.
No, that's really what it says. It really is. It's like, just, we think it's so hard. It's like, it's what I just said. It's like, we think this is such hard work, right? It's such hard work but yeah. At a certain point, that's the work. Life is the work. Life is the work.
This is why I was just now about just doing, because that's me. I do.
But why? Like, are you noticing what you notice? Because you can do and notice what you notice. You can do and apply your awake curiosity. The hollow feeling comes from not being awake in your curiosity, not being connected to your heart. That's what that hollow feeling is. The hollow feeling is not having an instrument in your heart that you're attuned to, that's vibrating. We have to get listening to the instrument. The only way to do that is through curiosity and reverence. The only way. It's not meditating more and doing a heroic dose of whatever. That stuff is chemotherapy. That stuff is chemotherapy for the soul. That stuff is like, we need it to break through the patterns. At a certain point, maybe we don't need the chemotherapy anymore. At a certain point. Now, maybe we do. Maybe we take a break and then we come back to it. I don't know. But the point is we start getting attuned to the instrument. And the instrument will tell us and guide us, hey, it's good information when it's hollow. Noticing an activation doesn't mean necessarily noticing hot, heat triggers. It might actually be noticing the hollow, the lack of sensation, the void.
Okay. Cynthia, this has been an awesome conversation. Please tell the lovely folks at the Conscious Man 7 where they can find you. Tell us if you do any coaching, how they can get in contact with you, how they can work with you. Tell us the name of your book or books, and all of that good stuff.
Sure. My website is cynthiaabulafia.com, and my book is Embodying the Goddess, How to Awaken Curiosity and Reverence on the Spiritual Path. And I do events and I do travel around. A lot of my events currently are local, but I'm going to be creating online events as well, just to have more touchstone. These amplification practices are extremely powerful. And I'll be doing more of those very soon. And yeah, I'm out. I'm available. Here I am. I'll be writing more books. I have one that I'm mostly done with now called Embodying the Void. That'll be interesting.
Sounds from the title, it certainly sounds very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And guys, so today's conversation, we touched many different things. And one of the things that we need to do is that we need to really get our physical bodies in shape, because this is actually part of the embodiment. So if you actually would like to start this journey of embodiment, living your best version of your life, and you want to get into the best shape, if you like, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriana_246 or my name Todd Cave, because I help spiritually inclined people like you burn fat and to build muscle. And send me a message, let's have a chat, and let's see if you're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Army. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do that by visiting our merch store. We have some cool tank tops, hoodies, shirts, and sweats. Link to the Amazon store, Todd and me, will be in the description of this podcast. And today, I think I have only fitting shirt. Truth isn't learned, truth is realized. So if you would like to support this podcast, get a cool shirt and some cool other merch, visit the link in the description of this podcast, Todd and me on Amazon, and you will get this shirt, Truth Isn't Learned, Truth is Realized, as part of that series. If you are on a spiritual journey, or you would like to start a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, I can help you to get some magic mushrooms. So if you also have PTSD or CPTSD, magic mushrooms are great for that. So hit me up on my Instagram at Adriana_246 or my name Todd Cave on Facebook. Send me a message, let's have a chat, and I'll help you to get some magic mushrooms. So if you are listening to this podcast on one of the podcast platforms and you simply don't like ads, because they have a lot of ads, Amazon, Spreaker, Deezer, etc., and you would like to have an ad-free experience, you can consider becoming a member of our Patreon or Locals community. You will get early releases to all the podcasts. You get direct access to me because I get a ton of messages on social media, and I replay the messages there first. And as the community grows, we'll be having Zoom calls and lives and all that kind of stuff. And just for a few bucks a month, you can help support this podcast. It helps us spend time to research awesome guests like Cynthia, and also to help us with things like editing. So link to the Patreon or Locals community will be in the description of this podcast. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, The Kembo, at thekembo.com, to get yourself some cool organic pyramids, tower busters, or jewelry. Visit The Kembo at thekembo.com. Use coupon code CM7 to get 10% off your order. If this conversation moves something in you, please don't just let it sit there. This is exactly what she's talking about. Embody it. Share this episode, leave a comment below, subscribe to the Conscious Man 7 podcast, and leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms. Tell me what cracked open for you today. Cynthia's book, Embodying the Goddess, is available now via the link in the description. Go get it, go read it, and then come back and tell me what changed. Cynthia, many thanks for being a guest on the Conscious Man 7 podcast. This was an awesome conversation.
It was an awesome conversation, Todd.
To all the Conscious Man 7 family around the world, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for supporting the mission, and thank you for choosing to look inside of you to heal, as it creates a ripple effect in the world. This was another episode of the Conscious Man 7 podcast, the place where we go beyond the veil in search of the truths that they hide from you, to help you to reclaim your power and to step into the truest version of yourself. You are the help that you've been looking for. So remember, folks, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. Speak to you soon. Cheers and namaste.